how to increase your speed by 30%. In this video, we're going to talk about several things related to the right hand and how you can improve your speed by about 30%. And I just want to start right off the bat by giving you a quick way to assess how fast you can actually play or how fast you have the potential to play. And that is by simply doing this. Take your fingers, you can either move them back and forth like this or even take your guitar and tap them and listen to how fast that is, okay? This is something that I learned from Christopher Parkeny when I studied with him. And basically, if you do this, that is roughly how fast you should be able to play on guitar, okay? It's a way to just roughly gauge how fast you can play, okay? Now, the thing is, there are people who can maybe do this really, really fast, but when it comes to playing the guitar, it doesn't translate, right? Or maybe you can't do this too fast, right? Maybe it's a little bit hard for you. That's okay. Everybody is built different. But I still believe even if maybe you can't do this the fastest, that you can improve it. So in this video, we're going to cover why people struggle with speed. I'm going to talk about some of the common problems that people have that prevent them from playing faster. We're going to talk about some of the basic right hand mechanics so that you can understand kind of how the hand works. Then we're going to talk about kind of the mindset when it comes to speed. And finally, I'm going to give you some exercises to practice, which is probably the most important practical part of what you can practice to increase your speed by about 30%. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about why people struggle with speed, okay? And well, even before I talk about that, let's talk about, or let's mention that speed is not everything, right? I know in guitar especially, I feel like speed is something that is, I think it's harder to acquire than some other instruments. Just physically of how we play it, especially when you play with your fingers and not with a pick. So speed is not everything, right? Just because maybe you're the fastest player doesn't mean that you're the best player, right? And there's a difference between people who can play fast, but it sounds sloppy and maybe doesn't even sound that good. And there's a difference between people who can play fast, who can play clean, and who can play well, right? So speed is not everything. It doesn't mean that you're the best just because you can play the fastest. However, speed is impressive, right? And it's something that we associate with virtuosity, and somebody who has mastery over the instrument is someone who is capable of playing fast in general, right? So I just want to touch on that first. Let's talk about why people struggle with speed, okay? The main reason that people struggle with speed is because how they try to play the guitar, and when they try to play it quickly, is they end up finding a way that is just so unnatural to play. And it's like, if I were to try to play guitar like you're trying to play guitar, I wouldn't be able to play fast either. No one will be able to play fast the way that you're trying to play the guitar, if that makes sense. And specifically, I'm talking about when it comes to playing rest stroke scales fast. I've seen people who have a pretty good free stroke, and then when it comes to rest stroke, they completely change everything about how they're playing, and it's so unnatural. Like, for example, I see a lot of people do this when they try to play rest stroke. It's like they stroke and they like move their whole hand and they try to play fast, and it's like, no wonder you can't play fast. Like, I almost feel bad for them in a way, because I want to fix it. You know, I'm like, why are you doing this when you should just move your fingers? You know, don't make it so complicated. So that is, for me, that is the biggest reason that I think people struggle with speed. It's just because they're trying to do movements that are not natural. And if you can make it natural, it will be easier. It will be much, much, much easier because you're not going to be fighting something that's unnatural, right? So that's kind of what I want to touch on with, or the point I want to make of why people struggle with speed. So next, let's talk about some of the basic right hand mechanics, because this is something that you have to understand in order to be able to play in a natural way, right? So basics of the right hand mechanics. Your right hand fingers have 3 joints, okay? We have here, which is the large knuckle joint we call this the middle joint, and we call this the tip joint, okay? When you play guitar, in general, you want to just originate the motion from the large knuckle joint, okay? It's just like you make a fist, okay? It's like in your everyday life when you pick up something, okay? When I pick up this guitar, right? I'm bending all the joints in my knuckles, right? And it's something that I don't think about. When I pick something up, like this, I don't think about it, right? I just do it, okay? So I want you not to overthink your stroke when you stroke a string. I want you just to think it's this, okay? I heard, or I saw a masterclass one time with Pepe Romero, who's like the speed god when it comes to guitar and scales. And he said to play the guitar is to do this, okay? It's simply just this. And it applies to your left hand as well, okay? We're mostly talking about the right hand in this video because I also believe that when it comes to speed, the main problem that people have and struggle with is in the right hand, not so much the left hand. It can be the left hand, you can have problems with the left hand, but that's a separate topic. For this topic, we're mostly focused on the right hand. So like I said, 3 joints: large knuckle joint, middle joint, and tip joint, okay? When you stroke a string, we're just originating the motion from here, but you are going to bend all the joints in the finger, okay? As simple as that. So that's what I want you to understand when you're stroking the strings. So our goal when it comes to playing fast and improving your speed is to what? Is to make things natural. So that's why I want you to understand the basic right hand mechanics. Another thing that people do, and this is kind of tends to be a personal preference, but this is one of the reasons that you see people who bend their wrist when they play, right? A lot of new school teachings and guitarists say that you should keep your wrist straight. That's fine, that works for a lot of people. It just depends on what works for you. But you also see a lot of people who play fast who have a bend in the wrist, or I don't always like to use the word bend, but sometimes people call it bent wrist. We also can say like it's a tilt in the hand, right? I tend to do this a lot, especially when I play rest stroke, is that I tilt my hand. Now the reason that I tilt is that I want to try to make these 2 fingers, because most of the time when you play scales, we're going to use I and M. I want to make these 2 fingers closer to the same length, because obviously they're not the same length, right? Your middle finger is always longer, and by tilting, right? If I play like this angle to the string, right, where this one's longer, this one's shorter, it's like trying to run with one leg that's longer and one leg that's shorter, right? You're gonna run and you're gonna be like super lopsided, right? So you're not gonna be able to run quickly, you're not gonna be able to run smoothly, and you're not gonna be able to run fast or with any kind of like consistent motion, right? It's gonna be inconsistent. So the reason that I tilt a little bit is because, check it out. Now I've reduced the amount of length that's in this finger, okay? If I'm like this, my middle finger is much longer. And you can almost see too, there's like, if I do this, right, there's like a line that happens where these 2 fingers line up. So I'm essentially just kind of trying to find that line so that it's more equal for the 2 fingers, okay? Sometimes you see people that work around this and they use I and A to play scales, which also works. Why? Because they're more closely the same length. And I've seen some people play scales like that and it sounds great and it works for them. I sometimes do that, but my default is IM. For me, that's more comfortable. So let's change the angle. I'm gonna give you guys a close-up of my right hand and we're gonna go over some of the things that you can practice to improve your speed. So the main technique that I want you to take away from this video is the technique called planting, okay? I talk about this every time I do a video about speed. And if you're gonna practice only one exercise to improve your speed, it's planting, okay? What planting is simply just placing your finger on the string before you stroke it, okay? So my finger is technically planted right now. Then I'm gonna stroke the string, okay? I can plant my next finger on the string and then I'm gonna stroke it, okay? Now, that's technically planting. We can take that to the next level, or even an extreme level, if I practice it quickly. And what I mean by quickly is I'm just gonna play a note and then I'm immediately gonna plant my next finger on the string so that it's prepped and it's ready to go, okay? So in an instant, I'm already ready to play the next note. I'm not stroking the note and then my next finger is like going way out here and then I'm gonna say, okay, let me get this into position. By that time, you're way too late, right? The speed is already, you're not gonna be fast because it's already slow, right? So you need to pluck and you need to plant your finger almost immediately. Think of it as like a really staccato short note, done, right? Okay, This is how I practice my scales. So I might do something like, right? You can even stay on the same string. Sometimes I'll do like 4 notes, or 4 strokes per note like this. Okay, that is super, super, super important. You can practice your scales like this. Basically, anytime I have a fast passage, I practice it planted, okay? Now, you need to be strict with yourself and make sure that every note is even and that it's staccato, okay? I don't want to see like this is too slow. Okay, yes, I'm planting. I mean, okay, too slow I guess we could say is relative. If you're gonna analyze your fingers, then yeah, do it slow. While you can analyze and check everything. Once that becomes comfortable though, if you want to improve your speed, it needs to be as short as possible, right? So that I'm reducing all the movements, okay? Then when you speed it up, it should sound a little bit more smooth. And you can even, let your fingers be a little more loose, I would say as well, okay? So like I said, no matter what the passage is, typically if it's a fast passage, I practice planting, especially when it comes to techniques like tremolo. When I'm practicing tremolo, you betcha I'm planting every single one of those notes. For scales, whether it's free stroke or rest stroke, I practice planting. So that is the one thing that I want you to take away from this video. And now I want to tell you a little bit of a story, which also kind of leads into our next topic, which is your mindset when it comes to speed, okay? When I was an undergraduate studying at Pepperdine with Christopher Parkening, at the end of the year, we would have a speed contest, okay, with all the guitarists in the program. And it was, I don't know, it was for fun. It wasn't like to see who's the best. But it was just to kind of see, who's the fastest, and it was also kind of intimidating. But what we would do is, at the end of the semester, we'd all get up on the stage, and Parkening would be up there with his metronome, and he would say, okay, let's start at 100, okay? Play a C major scale, with 16th notes, right? And we do like 4 strokes per note like this. Now, actually, before we even got to the competition part, and I found out that there was going to be a speed competition, I just told myself that I was going to win, okay? I don't know why. I was just like, I'm going to win. I'm going to win this. It was my first year there. I was one of the new guys, and I was like, I'm just going to win. So I just decided mentally that I was going to play fast because I knew I was going to put in the work and the practice to achieve that. And so, I don't know, maybe like a month leading up to the end of the semester, I practiced my planting every single day with a metronome, and I slowly sped it up. And leading up to the competition, I would ask my buddies in the guitar program, are you guys practicing for the scale competition or not? And they were like, no, whatever. I can only play as fast as I can play, right? Kind of, right? And I was like, I'm gonna get an edge on these guys because they're not really practicing that much for it, but I'm gonna practice and I'm gonna improve my speed. So I think your mindset is important, because I've also run into guitarists and been in programs with guitarists who they tell me flat out, they're like, yeah, I can't play fast, I just can't do it, my fingers don't work that well. But the truth is, I've heard them play and their fingers work pretty well. It's not like they're slow, and I think that they can improve upon that, but they accept the fact that I'm a slow player, I'm never gonna be able to play fast. And so don't get into that kind of mindset, because it's not healthy. Get into the mindset that you can improve and that you will improve if you put in the work and you really try to analyze what you're doing. You make things feel natural and you get better. Anyways, back to the story. So it's the competition day. Parkening has his metronome. He's like, hey, we're gonna start at 100. So he goes to the first person. They're sitting in a chair. He walks up to them. They play the scale. He goes to the next person. There's only 8 of us in the program, so it's a fairly small program. So he goes around all 8. Okay, and then he bumps it up to 110. It's like, okay, you play it, you play it, you play it. Gets up to faster, 120, 130. Maybe around 130, people start to drop out, right? So if he goes to you and you start playing, and you start failing, right? He's like, okay, you're done. Sorry, you're out. So like you leave the stage basically. Next person, you know, we get up to 140, people start to drop out. Next person goes, and then we're like at like 150 or something. And I think it's only me and like Alex Park, if you know him, he's a fantastic classical guitarist. Basically, it came down to him and I. And I think I had just a slight edge over him, and we maxed out at like 160 or something. And so there's also another interesting aspect to talk about that I mentioned at the beginning. There's so many things I want to talk about. Okay, so basically that story is just to tell you that the mindset is important. You want to tell yourself that you can improve, that you can play faster, and that you'll find a way to make it natural, okay? But the other thing I want to touch on too is, and I touched on this at the beginning, is that you can play fast and sloppy, and you can play really, really fast, but almost to where if you play fast and sloppy, like it doesn't actually sound like you're playing that fast. I've heard people who play slower, but clean and powerful, and it gives the impression that they're actually playing faster than they are, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind, that I think there's actually more value in having more clarity and power to your sound than there is in playing faster, but maybe a little less clarity and a little less power, you know. Of course, it depends on the context. You know, maybe the pieces should be light and it should be more lyrical versus, you know, like a machine gun, you know. So it does depend on the context. But those are my thoughts, and I want you to practice your scales planting, okay? Just like we talked about. I would recommend you also do it with a metronome so you can gauge your progress, okay? Start slow and kind of find your point to where you max out so that you have a starting point, right? Maybe that's 100, maybe it's 90, maybe it's more or less. Get your maximum speed, and then what I want you to do is go back, slow things down, practice the planting slowly like I was talking about, and find a way where it's natural, where you stay relaxed, okay? You're not moving your hand like this every time you play a rest stroke, okay? That's a huge, huge no-no. You want this to be as stable as possible, and you just want to kind of make this fist motion, okay? It's a little bit different for everybody, like I said. Some people like to play with the more straight wrist, some people like to have a tilt. But the goal is that you want to make it natural, okay? So keep that in mind, keep that at the forefront of your thoughts when you're practicing this. And I hope this video helps you. I hope it increases your speed. Let me know how your progress goes. And the other thing I want to also mention is that this all takes time, right? You're not just going to practice this today and then all of a sudden increase your speed by 30%, okay? It's going to take days and reps over a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, years, right? I'm still working on improving my speed and my power and everything. So it's a journey, right? And so enjoy the process, enjoy the practice, and I hope this video helped you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.